Imagine this. A man sits in a room filled with everything he once prayed for. The house, spacious and quiet. The bank account, stable. The love of another human being, secure. He has climbed the ladder he believed would end his restlessness. Yet in the stillness of his achieved dreams, something sinister creeps in. A whisper that what he has is not enough. The satisfaction that once burned like fire in his chest now fades into a gray ash of familiarity. He begins to crave again, though he cannot name the object of his craving. This paradox is the curse of the human soul. Why is it that no matter what we gain, wealth, knowledge, love, security, there remains a gnawing emptiness that refuses to be silenced? Why do we, unlike other animals, so rarely rest in what we have? A lion does not sulk after a successful hunt, wishing for a more poetic kill. A bird does not abandon its nest because it longs for a more extravagant architecture. Yet we, beings who can imagine eternity and beauty, tremble with discontent even in the arms of plenty. The unsettling truth is this: human beings are uniquely designed to be unsatisfied. We are haunted not by lack, but by imagination. To picture another possibility is to wound oneself with desire. The very faculty that makes us creators also condemns us to dissatisfaction. Every triumph plants the seed of its own erosion. Aristotle once wrote, "Man is by nature a political animal, but beneath this social dimension lies something deeper. Man is by nature an unfulfilled animal. The political, the cultural, the artistic, these are not ornaments, but desperate responses to the insatiable hunger of our being. When one goal is reached, another emerges, not because the first was worthless, but because our essence is a forward-moving fire. We are defined less by what we achieve than by what we long for. Picture the child who begs for a toy with ferocious desire. The moment it is given, joy bursts like lightning. But within days, sometimes hours, the toy loses its sacred aura. It becomes ordinary, and the child's heart begins to ache again for the next horizon of delight. This is not childishness, it is humanity stripped bare. The adult who finally buys the house or earns the promotion is but a child with more elaborate toys, equally doomed to watch their shine fade into banality. And so the question presses on us like a blade. Is contentment ever possible, or are we condemned to be wanderers in a desert of infinite thirst? If we accept that desire is endless, then all of human civilization, from philosophy to religion, from art to empire, appears not as triumph, but as therapy, a treatment for the sickness of being alive. Friedrich Nietzsche, gazing into the abyss of this truth, observed that man is the not yet determined animal. He meant that we are not fixed in instinct or destiny. We are incomplete, forever reaching beyond ourselves. This incompleteness is both our torment and our glory. To be unfinished means to live in pain, but also to have the capacity for creation, reinvention, transcendence. Here lies the paradox. Our dissatisfaction is the wound that bleeds into despair, yet also the spark that lights every work of genius. To cure ourselves of discontent would be to amputate the very organ of growth. But to live with it is to wander in a labyrinth with no exit, where every door opens only to another hunger. This is where our exploration must begin, not with the naive hope that contentment awaits us at the end of some path, but with the recognition that discontent is woven into the fabric of what we are. The rest of this journey will ask, how did Aristotle see this restless striving? How did Nietzsche embrace its danger and potential? And most of all, can we learn to live with this hunger, rather than be destroyed by it? Let us now turn to Aristotle, the philosopher who sought to anchor the human condition in purpose and clarity. His vision of life was not one of random hungers, but of ordered striving. For Aristotle, every being in nature has a telos, a final end or purpose toward which it naturally moves. The acorn seeks the oak, the horse seeks strength and swiftness, the seed seeks bloom. And man, he argued, seeks eudaimonia, the flourishing life, the state of living well in accordance with virtue. On the surface, this seems to offer hope. Perhaps our discontent is not endless but simply the signpost pointing us toward our natural completion. Maybe if we cultivate virtue, exercise reason, and live in harmony with our community, we can finally rest in satisfaction. But look closer, and a shadow emerges beneath Aristotle's optimism. Because if all human actions aim toward eudaimonia, then every action is infected with a gap, a sense of incompleteness. To want happiness is to admit we do not yet possess it. To strive for virtue is to confess our deficiency. And if happiness is the sum of a whole life, as Aristotle insists, then it is never fully ours while we are alive. At best, we live in approximation, walking toward a horizon we can never touch. The desire for flourishing is perpetual, never finalized until the last breath has been drawn. And even then, the verdict rests not in our hands but in history's memory. Imagine a farmer in Aristotle's Athens, tilling his land, raising children, attending the agora. Each day he performs his duties faithfully, believing his life embodies virtue. But does he know for certain he has flourished? He cannot. A sudden misfortune, illness, poverty, the betrayal of friends, can collapse the structure of decades. Flourishing is not a possession but a fragile construct, dependent on forces beyond the self. The farmer, like us, lives in the tension between striving and uncertainty. This reveals the cruel genius of the Aristotelian vision. It dignifies our striving but never abolishes our restlessness. By insisting that the good life is an activity, not a static state, Aristotle guarantees that we are always in motion. To live virtuously is not to arrive, but to walk, step after step, in a perpetual dance with imperfection. What we mistake for completion is only temporary alignment, like the fleeting balance of a tightrope walker who must keep moving or fall. And yet, there is beauty in this demand. Aristotle gives our dissatisfaction a structure. Instead of random craving, he invites us to channel our hunger into forms of excellence. Courage, wisdom, temperance, justice. The ache of incompletion becomes the fuel for greatness. In this sense, dissatisfaction is not a flaw but a signal. It reminds us that we are meant to live intentionally, not lazily. Still, this raises a deeper unease. If virtue and flourishing require constant striving, then contentment as stillness may be impossible. One does not arrive at courage. One must continually act courageously. One does not own wisdom. One must practice it daily. The very structure of the good life, then, is eternal motion. And what is eternal motion but dissatisfaction in disguise? Consider Aristotle's claim, happiness depends upon ourselves. First, it sounds empowering, but in truth, it places a heavy burden on the individual. If flourishing is an activity we must ceaselessly perform, then happiness is never a gift bestowed, but a task never completed. We must hold the paradox. Our lives are most human when we are striving, yet striving guarantees we will never be fully at rest. The mirage of fulfillment shimmers just ahead, urging us onward, giving shape to our efforts. But a mirage, no matter how beautiful, cannot be grasped. Aristotle dignifies the chase, but he cannot deliver the capture. And perhaps he does not want to, for the chase itself may be the essence of being human. As we turn now toward Nietzsche, we will see a thinker less concerned with harmony and balance, and more intoxicated with the fire of endless becoming. If Aristotle gave our dissatisfaction form, Nietzsche will give it teeth, claws, and wings. Where Aristotle spoke of purpose and harmony, Nietzsche thundered of chaos and creation. If Aristotle offered us a path to flourishing, Nietzsche tore away the comfort of such finality and declared, "There is no end point, no telos, no tranquil resting place. Man is not defined by what he has achieved, but by his capacity to constantly overcome himself." Nietzsche looked at the human condition and saw not a creature longing for completion, but one trembling with excess energy. To live, he argued, is not to seek a final state of happiness but to embrace the ceaseless struggle of becoming. Where Aristotle's farmer tends his land in steady rhythm, Nietzsche's hero, his Übermensch, smashes rhythms to invent new ones. Contentment, in this vision, is not just elusive. It is a danger, a sedative that lulls man into mediocrity. Think of the times you achieved something you once thought impossible. The degree earned, the mountain climbed, the love confessed. For a moment, There is triumph, but soon after comes the void. Now what? This question is not a failure of planning, Nietzsche would say, but the heartbeat of existence itself. Life thrives not in the having but in the straining. Once we settle, decay begins. To demand final contentment is to demand the death of growth. Nietzsche wrote, "Man is something that shall be overcome." These words are not a condemnation but a call to arms. To be human is to be unfinished, provisional, a bridge between what is and what could be. This means dissatisfaction is not merely psychological discomfort. It is the very engine of our becoming. Without it, we stagnate into herd animals, content to graze in the fields of comfort, blind to the higher peaks. But Nietzsche also saw the danger in this relentless striving. The void that follows every victory can collapse into nihilism. The feeling that nothing matters, since every achievement soon loses meaning. How, then, can we avoid despair in a world without final fulfillment? His answer was brutal and liberating. We must learn to love the hunger itself. This is where his concept of eternal recurrence strikes like a thunderbolt. Imagine, he asked, that you must live your life exactly as it is. Every pain, every joy, every failure, every triumph. Again and again for eternity. Would you curse this fate, or embrace it with a cry of joy? The one who can affirm such a destiny, Nietzsche declared, is the one who has learned the deepest secret, that life's value is not in arriving anywhere, but in the eternal return of striving. To love your life, not as a stepping stone to some higher satisfaction, but as it is, restless, incomplete, burning with desire, that is the mark of strength. It is a terrifying vision, because it abolishes the dream of final rest. There is no promised land where desire will be silenced. But it is also electrifying, because it turns dissatisfaction from a curse into a challenge. Each pang of emptiness becomes an invitation to create, to transform, to become more than what we are. Consider the artist who, after completing a masterpiece, feels a hollow silence. For Aristotle, this might be an indication to redirect one's striving toward another virtue. For Nietzsche, it is the call to transcend one's previous self, to create again, not because completion is possible, but because creation itself is the meaning. Dissatisfaction is the brushstroke that never ends, the melody that compels another note. In this light, Nietzsche does not merely accept our discontent, he deifies it. The unfulfilled hunger within us is not weakness but strength, proof that we are creatures of becoming, not being. To seek to end it would be to betray our very nature. And so, where Aristotle offered order and virtue as ways to shape our restlessness, Nietzsche offers fire and affirmation. To live is to burn without end. But how does this relentless striving manifest in our daily lives? In our relationships, ambitions, and failures? That is where the philosophical becomes personal, where theory collides with the raw fabric of human experience. Step out of philosophy's lofty halls and into the ordinary streets of modern life, and you will see Aristotle and Nietzsche walking beside you, hidden in every craving, every disappointment, every restless thought. The human hunger they described is not confined to treatises. It saturates the fabric of our daily existence. Consider ambition. A young professional lands a job at a prestigious firm, the position they once dreamed about while sitting in lecture halls. The first months pulse with adrenaline. The paycheck feels like victory, the title like a crown. Yet soon the glow fades. The work becomes routine, the praise less intoxicating. Another rung of the ladder comes into view. Promotion, recognition, more power. Each step brings a brief flare of triumph, followed by the gnawing question, what next? This cycle mirrors Aristotle's vision of perpetual striving for virtue and Nietzsche's refusal to rest in achievement. To stop moving feels like death. To move forward feels like chasing shadows. Or take love, that most exalted of human pursuits. In the beginning, passion blazes, a sense of having found the one. But as time unfolds, desire mutates. Familiarity dulls intensity. Flaws emerge. The heart secretly whispers for novelty, for the intoxication of the unknown. Some pursue affairs, others daydream of different lives, and even the most faithful wrestle with the ache of imperfection. Love itself is not the cure to discontent but one of its most visible stages. The human soul does not simply want to be loved. It wants to be endlessly desired, endlessly renewed. Yet permanence cannot coexist with novelty. We are left suspended between longing for stability and craving the thrill of change. Consumerism reveals another theater of this paradox. Walk into a mall or scroll endlessly through an online store, and watch how swiftly desire shifts from one object to the next. The shoes we longed for lose their power the moment we place them in our closet. The phone, gleaming in its newness, soon feels heavy in our pocket as the next model is released. Capitalism does not create our dissatisfaction. It exploits it, magnifies it, commodifies it. Every advertisement whispers the same lie. This will complete you. Yet the purchase only resets the hunger, proving that the hunger itself is eternal. But dissatisfaction is not merely shallow. It cuts deeper, threading through the way we perceive our very lives. In quiet moments, lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, we often feel a void. Is this all there is? We compare ourselves with others, measuring the gap between our lives and the imagined fullness of theirs. This restlessness pushes some toward self-improvement, others toward despair, and many toward endless distraction. Our age of screens and endless scrolling is not a symptom of boredom but of metaphysical hunger. We consume information, images, stories not because we are curious but because we are starving for something that no image or story can satisfy. This is where Aristotle's framework and Nietzsche's vision converge. Aristotle would remind us that dissatisfaction, properly channeled, pushes us toward excellence. Each disappointment is a call to act virtuously, to live deliberately. Nietzsche would challenge us to embrace the hunger itself, to treat it not as a curse but as a proof of life's energy. Together, they offer a strange kind of guidance. Do not expect rest, but do not despise the restlessness. As Soren Kierkegaard once remarked, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. In other words, our dissatisfaction is inseparable from the terrifying gift of possibility. To be human is to stand before countless doors, knowing none of them will silence the ache, but each offers a different dance with it. So when we observe ambition, love, consumerism, or even our late-night doubts, we are not witnessing failures of the human project. We are witnessing its essence. Our dissatisfaction is not an error to be fixed but the pulse that drives us to build, to love, to destroy, to rebuild. And yet, one final question remains. If restlessness is our nature, what is the wisest way to live with it? Should we seek harmony, as Aristotle urged, or embrace the fire of endless becoming, as Nietzsche demanded? Or is there another way, a synthesis that allows us not only to endure dissatisfaction but to find meaning within it? We arrive, then, at the final and perhaps most troubling realization. Dissatisfaction is not a malfunction of the human spirit but its very core. To be alive is to be restless. To seek contentment as a permanent state is like demanding a flame to stop flickering. The real question is not how to abolish this hunger, but how to live with it, how to transform the wound into strength, the ache into meaning. Aristotle and Nietzsche, though separated by centuries and radically different temperaments, both point us toward this truth. Aristotle insists that the good life is a lifelong activity, never secured but always in motion. Nietzsche cries out that to live is to burn in the fire of becoming, to embrace the hunger itself. One seeks order, the other exalts chaos. But together, they reveal the paradox of human existence. The desire for rest is eternal, yet our greatness is born in unrest. What, then, are we to do with this paradox? One path is denial. Many attempt to silence dissatisfaction through distraction, consumption, or shallow pleasures. Yet the silence never lasts. The void always returns, louder, hungrier. To numb restlessness is to multiply it. Another path is despair. To see our endless hunger as meaningless torment, proof that life is a cruel joke. But despair consumes without building. It leads only to paralysis. The third path, the hardest yet the most human, is acceptance without resignation. To recognize dissatisfaction as permanent, but not as punishment. To see it instead as the rhythm of existence. Like a musician who knows the dissonant note will always reappear, yet plays with it to create deeper music, we too can learn to weave our discontent into a life that sings. This does not mean romanticizing suffering or glorifying endless striving. It means shifting our relationship with the hunger. Instead of demanding it vanish, we can ask, what will I create with it? A work of art, a deeper bond, an act of courage, a personal transformation? The void becomes a canvas. The ache becomes brushstrokes. Contentment may never come as a final possession, but moments of meaning can blaze like constellations in the night of our longing. Think of the mountaineer who climbs, knowing no summit will satisfy forever. Still, the climb is not meaningless. Each ascent, each moment of breathless awe, carries a significance that is real, even if it fades. Or the parent who knows love for a child will always bring worry, restlessness, imperfection. Yet the love itself is richer because it is unending, because it is never complete. These are not failures of contentment. They are the very texture of a meaningful life. Nietzsche teaches us to say yes to life, even with its hunger, to embrace the eternal recurrence of striving. Aristotle reminds us to shape that striving with virtue, so that our actions do not dissolve into chaos but build toward something noble. Between them lies a strange wisdom. Embrace the fire, but direct its flames. Love the hunger, but teach it to create rather than destroy. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Dissatisfaction, then, is not the barrier to living well, it is the very path. The emptiness we feel is not proof of failure, but the invitation to live more deeply. So perhaps the measure of a life is not whether we achieve contentment, but whether we learn to dance with our discontent. To move with the rhythm of longing, neither crushed by it nor enslaved to it. To accept that the hunger will always remain, yet still to love the world, to create, to strive. When the man in the quiet room, surrounded by everything he once desired, feels the whisper of emptiness, he need not curse it. He can choose to listen differently, not as a taunt but as a call to love again, to build again, to imagine again. A call to live, not as a creature seeking rest, but as one who burns brightly in the endless night. For in the end, perhaps this is the truest form of contentment we can hope for. Not the silencing of desire, but the courage to carry it, to shape it, and to let it shape us until our final breath.